Hello and welcome back to the UAS Magazine podcast. I'm your host, John Nelson, and today we are joined by Erin Roesler, Deputy Executive Director at Northern Plains UAS Test Site. Erin, thanks for joining us today and welcome to the podcast.
Hello, my pleasure. Happy to be here.
All right. Hey, let's start off by having you tell us and our listeners a little bit about your background and the work you do at the Northern Plains UAS Test Site.
Sure. Well, I can definitely be a long story, but I'll try to summarize it up. I started in aviation, at an early age, but I came to the University of North Dakota, pilot first and foremost. At a time, though, where airlines were in a very different scenario than what they were today. So I got intrigued by UAS. I was deeply entrenched in the University of North Dakota in their undergraduate program and quickly found myself involved in developing and teaching UAS curriculum. But then fast forward to about, 5 years ago now, I wanted a new challenge. And so I got pinged by the Northern Plains UAS Test Site to solve the little problem of standards and policy for UAS. And if anyone is, in this field knows, that's one of the biggest barriers we have, right? We don't have the regulation. We don't have the standards. We don't have the policy. So it was a new position. It was a new opportunity. It was really exciting for me. And so I started here as a standards and policy manager, really deep into the weeds. And I tell people I'm lucky I'm a nerd and I like reading all those things. And that's what I started working on. And then from there moved into, operations side, getting a little bit more involved in orchestrating and leading a lot of our flight activities here at the test site. And now to the point of Deputy Executive Director working hand in hand with Trevor Woods, our Executive Director, to kind of lead and manage all the things that we do at the test site.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, it's been, 3 months roughly where you've taken on this new role? Now, you've probably done all that stuff prior, but officially, is that when your title changed?
Yeah. So officially started in December as the deputy position. So about 3 months now.
All right. Well, congratulations. Well deserved.
Thanks.
Well, another question we have is, when we talk about the Northern Plains UAS Test Site, it really has a variety of different services. Can you explain what these services are?
Yeah. So everyone thinks when you hear test site, a geographical, physical location, right? You have a sandbox and that's where you go and operate. That's not exactly true. North Dakota always took a different approach. The test site is a program, right? It's a federal program that the FAA, was tasked to follow through on by Congress. So North Dakota, when we, were awarded the test site program, we took a different approach and we really said, hey, if we want to really solve the problem of integration into the national airspace for drones, we can't just be one site and one location and, one set of geographies. We really got to look at this approach from all different angles. And so because of that, then we have a few different things that we do and a few different services we offer. Yeah, we do flight testing. We support UAS testing in particular, which you hear called that holy grail, the beyond visual line of sight flights. We do a lot of testing in that realm. We not only fly, but then we also act as mission commanders, data collectors, and other things within that flight test regime. We also then take our expertise and provide a lot of consulting and advising services. We offer companies help on how to get assistance with waivers or exemptions or COAs or third-party validation if you're doing, parachute testing. Really provide, a wide range of subject matter expertise because we really feel like that's probably a gap the industry has, that knowledge. And so if aside from policy and regulation being barriers to integrating drones to the NAS, knowledge is an area as well. And so we help a lot of different companies, everywhere from a small, 2-person startup to the large, multi-billion-dollar companies. We also do a lot of research. The FAA doesn't know how to solve this challenge of integrating into the NAS. A lot of industry doesn't either. And so there's a lot of research that's either funded federal research or specific agency research, whether that be DoD driven. And so we work, in advancing counter UAS, advanced air mobility, networked infrastructure, DAA, C2, whatever it might be, lots and lots of research, which means every day you're here, it's a different job. And then lastly, this is the one part where I'll go back and say, We do have a few facilities and sites that we work on, and we can provide those for clients as well. And we work with a lot of our partners, whether that be Grad Sky or the Grand Forks Air Force Base or the North Dakota National Guard, and we can provide sites, and facilities and assets to clients to help them with it, whatever their research or flight testing needs might be.
Excellent. Thank you. And to our listeners out there, when you're talking about Vantis specifically, what is the Vantis story and how does it factor into your operations at the test site?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? So what is Vantis? Is it a thing? Is it an entity? Is it a program? So let's rewind the clock, right? So the test site program was federally mandated 10 years ago now. And, in working in integrating drones in the national airspace, yes, policy regulation, big barriers. But there's another big barrier as well, and that's the lack of shared infrastructure. UAS is really the only subset within the entire transportation sector that does not get to benefit from shared infrastructure. We don't see that with our airports and traditional aviation. We don't see that with rails or highway or anything else, but that is a huge barrier for UAS. So as a test site, we realized that and made the pitch to the state of North Dakota and direct to the governor's office and said, hey, if we want to continue to be a leader in UAS and maintain that leadership, we got to figure out how to solve the shared infrastructure challenge as well. Mm-hmm. So it started as, okay, we had this idea, let's build out this statewide network. And that's actually what it was called. We didn't call it Vantis from the start. We called it the statewide network. But very quickly, we realized there's not a blueprint, there's not a roadmap, there's not standards, there's not regulation, there's not demand gen and work on, policy and integration and training and everything else that comes with taking on this endeavor. And because of that, it got named and branded Vantis because it is so much more than just infrastructure. And as shared infrastructure gets rolled out, that it's interoperable, it's compatible, not only across the state of North Dakota, but for other users, other entities, and other regions and other states. So that's what Vantis is. Yes, at its core, it is infrastructure, but it is so much more than just putting out radios and radars.
Great. Thank you. How often are you in communication with the FAA on some of the things that you have to deal with and challenges that you're facing?
Yeah, how often do I talk to the FAA? Well, I've talked to them about 3 times a day already.
I was just curious. I would have guessed something along those lines, maybe not 3 times a day, but definitely seems like it would be a lot. But
yeah, it is. And when you think about the FAA of how many different offices there are, that's why it's very important for not only just the Vantis program, but us as a test site to ensure that our efforts and our communication, our coordination with the FAA is very deliberate because we need to ensure we reach not just the office of, primary responsibility on a topic, but the other, adjacent offices as well. And that's where we really attribute, a lot of our success to is that collaboration and that proactive coordination within the FAA, because even the FAA will recognize they're a behemoth of an organization and they'll take the help. And we're happy to give it because I think that's where we see the reward on our investment is our collaboration, our partnership with the FAA.
Great. Thank you. Now, I understand you recently had the opportunity to pitch VantisUAS to Kevin O'Leary, also known as Mr. Wonderful.
Mr. Wonderful, yeah.
Right, from O'Leary Ventures and Shark Tank. I mean, that's awesome and it's exciting. Can you give us some of your key points that you highlighted and what did he want to hear and what seemed to resonate with him?
Yeah, well, I'll say for one thing, it's not like being on Shark Tank. At least those individuals, those contestants get to get through their entire pitch. I got to slide too, and Kevin O'Leary jumped in with questions.
That quick. You're like, but I didn't get to it yet. So you got to get to the points quick when you're in front of them, I guess. But
it was because he came in well-versed, well-educated. He knew exactly the problem that North Dakota is trying to solve and why it needs to be solved at the state level, recognizing the importance and ready to support the state, as well as understanding the environment that other states are trying to figure this out as well. So, not only is taking it from what we're doing in North Dakota and what Vantis will enable for the state of North Dakota, but how do we position ourselves to help other states? And so he saw the vision. He saw exactly what we're trying to do with this. And we are deeply entrenched in those conversations because we really firmly believe that we can help other states. It's partially because we're leading, but it's also because we recognize one of the biggest risks to ourselves as a state is also the biggest risk every other state encounters in this of I build out a system that is across my entire state. What happens when it's not compatible with the next state border? Well, no one wants that. No one wants interstate commerce. They want intrastate commerce. That's where every state looks at this and sees that as the economic opportunity of investing in infrastructure. So now the play is let's get some states together. Let's really make a push for this in a way that would have nationwide impact and a national presence and really set a federal foundation for how infrastructure needs to be rolled out. And that's what Kevin O'Leary saw in this. He saw that potential, and he wants to ensure that he had his winners and loser states, right? He wants to ensure North Dakota stays a winner in that regime as well. And I think he's right. I think we're there, and now let's get the other states to come join up with us.
Right. So my next question actually, had something to do along the lines of how will Vantis transform airspace systems both on a state and national level? Now, you're really saying it will lead the way, but it needs to be connected with all the other states and deal with those problems. But is there anything else you would like to add in how it will transform the airspace systems on a state and national level?
Yeah, so I think the challenge of UAS has been of integrating this new, smaller guy, the new guy to the table, right? And getting them into the airspace. But it's transforming the approach of realizing that the way in which we operate within the airspace has an opportunity to be improved upon, not only from a safety aspect, but from an efficiency and a utilization that we haven't been able to take on in decades because we're now just forced with this new opportunity because we have the catalyst of new entrants. So not only just UAS, but AAM and urban air mobility and all these other players that have the technology and are, meeting the demand and now challenging us at a federal level of going, okay, how do we stay not only the safest airspace and the most complex airspace in the world, but also the most efficient airspace in the world? I think we got that opportunity here with Vantis and in North Dakota, and it's being recognized. Kevin saw it, other investors are seeing it. Now we're just going to continue to maintain and lead that leadership for the nation.
Excellent. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or is there anything for our listeners that you would say, this is the one key takeaway I'd like to leave our listeners with?
One key takeaway to leave everyone with. Well, Vantis and the Northern Plains Test Site, we've been tasked by the state of North Dakota to lead this initiative for UAS and autonomy. And I think we can't afford to lose that leadership stakehold. We got to continue to maintain it. And so I think we got great opportunities in the year ahead for how we expand and bring on other states and encourage them to join us in this initiative, but also ensuring that we enable the initiatives here within our state to bring value to the citizens of North Dakota, largely by trying to enable public safety mission sets and those public mission use cases that will show us as we live here and work here every day that this is really worthwhile for the state of North Dakota to continue our investment. It's not about being first, but it's also about bringing value.
Great. Thank you. Again, we are joined today by Erin Roesler, Deputy Executive Director at Northern Plains UAS Test Site. Erin, thank you again for joining us today. It was so nice to chat with you. We appreciate it.
Of course, happy to be here. It was a wonderful chat. Happy to talk more, too.
Excellent, excellent. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to UAS Magazine for more podcasts like this and to stay up to date on the latest industry news. We hope that you've enjoyed this podcast, and we look forward to the next time. Until then.